let you see some of this stuff in practice as implemented by our students. And to introduce that, Quinten Steenhuis, my co-director of the Lit Lab.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for your patience. I might grab this. Is this good sound? As we're going to have lunch right after this, I hope you all do take a chance to come up and talk to the students, learn a little bit more about them after the presentations. Is this maybe not on? Always helps if it's turned on. All right. So it's my pleasure today to introduce the students who've been working with the Lit Lab over this past year as members of our Lit Clinic. So we have 11 students that have been working on all kinds of different areas of legal technology and innovation, from form redesign to document automation solutions to solutions powered by AI. The project that the students in our lab work on really both depend on the rule of law. They help empower people to understand and build trust in institutions. They serve a critical role. And I think we have to acknowledge as well that right now, part of that role and their ability to succeed is under attack. You're going to hear a little bit more about that today, about what's happening with our client populations and how they're affected by changes in the administration. I'm going to let them mostly introduce themselves. You're going to hear a wide range of different kinds of projects. We're going to jump right into the first presentation, which is Stephen Terry and Saif Al-Adam, and they're going to talk to you about their work.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Saif, and this is Stephen. We are honored to have you all here and to have this opportunity to present our project, the Virginia Court Form Redesigns. So when we think of court forms, it's supposed to help people navigate the legal system. But instead, they can sometimes feel like an obstacle course. The language is complicated, the layout is confusing, and the instructions, if they even exist, can often lack clarity. Now, I like to think of court forms like putting furniture together. You sit down and you tell yourself, 30 minutes is all you need, right? Should be easy. And an hour later, you realize you're only halfway done, and that's with instructions included. Now, imagine putting that same furniture together, but this time it's without instructions, or instructions that you can understand. It'll get really frustrating, and you'll just be left off with a pile of parts and your best guess. And that's what court forms can feel like to many people. Without clear guidance, it can completely stop someone from accessing justice. So, what makes a court form challenging? Well, it's subjective, but there are general patterns that have been backed up by the user feedback we've received. Language, layout, and instructions. These are the areas we've decided to focus on to make this form better and more user-friendly. Language, full of legal text. Layout, dense, small text with no logical flow. And instructions, confusing instructions or worse, no instructions at all. Let me show you our project. Our project started a year ago where user feedback was collected. Since then, we've continued to refine the design based on that feedback. This specific form, the tenant's assertion and complaint form, is intended to be used by the tenant to report a serious housing issue. But the tenant is not the only user of this form. We had to keep in mind 4 different users: the tenant who will be filing it, the landlord who will be receiving it, the court staff who will be processing it, and the sheriff's office who may need to serve it. That meant that every design choice we made had to be clear for all parties. So when redesigning a form, you could go with a design like this, which is very similar to the original court form, with the language changed as well as the instructions to make it more user-friendly. But while it does have these 2 things, it lacks layout. So we've decided to go with a new design.
So in our redesign of the tenant's assertion form, we used those 3 challenges that Saif just spoke about. The first one was language, which was an easier one to use. You've heard today about plain language principles and how a lot of pro se litigants are on lower reading levels than, what you would assume most people are. So we started with language. And where in certain places on the original form, it said things like this: the address or location of the dwelling unit or premises subject to this action. What is this asking for? So we changed that to what is the tenant's rental property address? Much more easy to understand, much more easy for a pro se litigant to use. And we applied this logic all throughout our form. Second was the design. This is what the original form looks like. And in our user testing last year, the number one feedback was that the tenants didn't know what any of this meant, but beyond that, didn't know what they were supposed to fill out, what the court was supposed to fill out, what the defendant was supposed to fill out, and what the server was supposed to fill out. So in our redesign, we went with something much more visually appealing. Our big change was that these gray boxes tell the tenant they're not supposed to fill those sections out. Only what they see in white and only what makes sense for them to fill out. Where you see these numbers, this is the front of it, and this is the back of it. Where you see these numbers go along with our instructions that I'm going to talk about next. Again, this is just a zoomed in version where you can see these gray boxes that are for the court, and for the landlord, it says to landlord. And the second one on the left, you can see to any authorized officer. It just makes the language a lot more clear. These numbers go along with our instructions. So again, to save furniture building, it makes a lot more sense when you have good instructions and good context. Right now, the original Virginia court form doesn't have any instructions on the website to accompany it. So we spent a lot of time giving instructions to our users. So we built this where this first page really educates the user on what they're using the form for, because the original one didn't give any context. This is specifically for repairs that haven't been made that they need to be made. It gives instructions on what filling the form is going to do, what they need before they fill out the form, and how to make sure that they qualify for it. Later on, you'll hear a lot about DocAssemble and online tools that some of our classmates have used, but our project was simply the paper form. So this is how we give people as much context and as much understanding as possible before they get started on it. And then those numbers correspond with a blank version of the form that tell them exactly what they need for each line item. This is our latest version of it that we sent to the Virginia court form for feedback. We're still waiting to hear back. And throughout the school year, we've been doing like different iterations and different updates. Hopefully, this is the one that actually ends up on the website. This is our favorite version so far, but we're still waiting on feedback and we're still working with the courts. And again, I'm Steven, and this is Safe. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is really excited about legal technology. I think it's been great energy in the room so far. And my colleague, Aaron Gray, and myself, Jack Brandt, we're really excited to present our work on the Massachusetts Appeals Court's informal brief pilot program. And we would be remiss if we did not start by thanking the Massachusetts Appeals Court for all of their work and their partnership throughout this. So the purpose of this program, the purpose of the Massachusetts Appeals Court informal brief, is for self-represented litigants or pro se litigants to navigate the appeals process. So a decision is rendered at the trial court level, and they think, no, I don't know that this is right. There was an issue here. They have the ability now to appeal that and write a brief with this program. In building this tool, we use DocAssemble, and everybody, thank you. And a lot of the groups use DocAssemble, so we wanted to take a minute to introduce it. So DocAssemble is an open source document automation guided interview platform. And it takes a very complicated set of instructions and simplifies it. And it allows us to, two people who are not programmers, who are not technologists by trade, to be able to help other people access the justice system. And we have a team of DocAssemble experts with the Lit Lab who we leaned on heavily and were super, super helpful. So I'm going to build on Safe's discussion about the instructions earlier. Sometimes you get a set of instructions and you don't know where to begin. You don't even know what your finished product is going to look like. And that's where DocAssemble comes in, serving as like an instructions plus, where it's going to take you step by step through the very complex appeals process. So DocAssemble uses conditional logic, error reduction, and accessibility. So conditional logic, it's if A, then B. So it's going to respond dynamically to the user's inputs and be able to guide them through the interview, making sure that the finished product is only going to have the necessary information. It's going to help us reduce errors, and we're going to make legal language more accessible, like Stephen was talking about. So what the interview does is it collects the user input and it asks the questions in a dynamic fashion, responding, essentially putting the next question up based on the user's previous response. It's going to process the data, and then it's going to produce a final document that is going to be able to be submitted to the appeals court and filed as an official legal brief, which is pretty cool. So here's an example of where the user is going to input information, and this is information that they have access to. The case was filed in the court on this date. You submit the date, and it's going to put that information into the final document that they'll be able to download and file with the court. And this is what that is going to look like. And now Aaron is going to talk about the specifics of the informal brief pilot program and how we use DocAssemble to build this.
Yeah, so in collaboration with the Massachusetts Appeals Court, we created a guided interview using DocAssemble to help pro se litigants through the informal brief submission process. And the biggest goal of ours was to simplify this overwhelming process by one, dividing the brief into manageable sections, two, using plain language to explain legal procedures, and three was to provide real-time guidance to users based upon their inputs. Now, the most difficult section of the brief for pro se litigants to complete is the legal argument section, which is where they have to adequately, dictate how they believe the trial court decided their case and why it was incorrect or correct. And to help them in doing so, we prompt the user with guided questions that allow them to articulate an answer that meets the appeals court requirements. In addition to this, we provide explanations, examples, and tooltips along the way for users to use as they go through the interview. For example, we have linked an informal brief guidance that the Massachusetts Appeals Court formulated themselves for if they need any further assistance. As with any project, we confronted a number of hurdles along the way. One was the technical learning curve. Second was balancing simplicity and legal accuracy. And third was the user testing aspect. As Jack mentioned, neither of us had any prior technical experience. And so not only did we have to learn the basics of coding, we also had to learn DocAssemble's specific logic, syntax, and YAML structure. And I can assure you that we came across a number of errors along the way, but thankfully the DocAssemble website and the assistance at the Lit Lab was really just an amazing help for us getting through this error. Also, we wanted to make the interview as user-friendly as possible, specifically in language, which is a huge barrier for most pro se litigants. And finally, of course, in working with the Massachusetts Appeals Court, we received feedback from them periodically and refined our interview so that not only was it user-friendly, but also would ultimately be accepted by the court. There are a number of exciting ways that we see this initiative moving forward. One would be the integration of large language models into the interview. As of right now, it is, prompted guidance, but with the implementation of LLMs, we could see a way in which the interview becomes more conversational and allows the users to better identify legal issues, refine their answers, and ultimately, again, ensure that the end product is acceptable for court submission.
Legal AI tools like DocAssemble make an impossible task possible, as evidenced by the Massachusetts Appeals Court Informal Brief Project. A complex legal issue, a complex legal task of writing a brief can be possible for anybody. Thank you all very much for your kind attention, and please enjoy the rest of the programming.
Good morning. My name is Tiffany Wiles. In addition to working with the Lit Lab, I also work with Suffolk University Law School's Health Law Clinic.
Good morning. My name is Landon Schimmel, and today we'll be sharing our project work empowering recipients of Social Security benefits with technology. Now, when you're dealing with an organization like Social Security that's marked by frequently changing policies and forms and overburdened administrators, it can be very difficult as a recipient of Social Security benefits to fulfill all the requirements necessary for you to continue earning the benefits that you're otherwise legally entitled to. Similarly, those who develop tools for these recipients to utilize must ensure that these tools remain updated to comply with the most up-to-date regulations and policies.
We all know the only constant is change. Regulatory agencies across the board, like the SSA, routinely have changes, probably an understatement in 2025. Form templates result in many changes, often because of these continuous regulatory rule and policy changes made by the organizations. Recipients of SSA and SSDI, as well as digital content creators, must keep up to date with these changes in order to provide accurate and complete information to the agency. If the old form continues to be submitted, it could be resulting in significant delays or even being rejected. Content creators have a serious ethical obligation to make sure that their forms are maintained and updated. This project is an example of the Suffolk Lit Lab's ongoing commitment to maintaining and updating these forms. One change or one item that SSA and SSDI requires is for users or beneficiaries to report changes. Now, this could be something as simple as a name or address change, marital status change, immigration status, or your health care changes, your medical conditions. These changes critically have to be reported within 10 days following the month that they were changed. If you fail to do this within the time allotted, it could result in an overpayment, underpayment, penalties, and even sanctions on future payments. So it's very serious.
Now, in the event that you fail to report your changes to Social Security in a timely manner, you could be receiving a notice from the Social Security Administration saying that you owe them money or that your benefits have been revoked. This can be very terrifying for the majority of Social Security recipients who depend on these benefits to make ends meet. And what's worse is that when these overpayments happen, many times the recipients of Social Security benefits are characterized as gaming the system or fraudsters. But the reality is that only 0.3% of Social Security payments are improper, and that most of these improper payments are actually caused by either administrative errors or mistakes on the part of the user in reporting their changes. What's apparent is that recipients of Social Security benefits need an easier, more user-friendly way of reporting changes in their lives to the Social Security Administration. Now, using DocAssemble, an open source tool that some of my classmates have also used in their projects, we're able to create a user-friendly digital guided interview publicly available on courtformsonline.org that recipients of Social Security can use either to report required changes to the Social Security Administration or, in the event that they're overpaid, to request waivers of that overpayment.
These tools provide three purposes. First, it's a defense mechanism against misinformation and financial hardship, giving users a clear, accessible way to report information required. These tools also fight to simplify the system, reducing legal jargon and taking users through a step-by-step guided process. Third, they empower people to give them the ability to assert their rights and ensure that they have the tools to challenge any unfair payment recovery. Using one of the digital guided interviews we updated and improved, you can produce a completed form to send to your local security office and maintain, most importantly right now, a copy for your own records.
In the event that you are overpaid as a recipient of Social Security benefits, you have three options. The first of which is that you can appeal the overpayment on the Social Security Administration's website. The second of which is that you can request that the overpayment be waived because you can't afford it or the overpayment was unfair for some other reason. Additionally, you can request that the amount that you have to pay back to Social Security each month be lowered to an amount that you can afford. Here's an example of the first page of each of those forms. These forms ask a lot of information of the users, and they can be very daunting to complete, especially if you've never completed one of these forms in the past. By using one of the digital guided interviews we created, users have a defense mechanism against unjust financial hardship and being falsely labeled as fraudsters. Using this interview, they can be guided through a simple, user-friendly process of completing their request for an overpayment waiver or their request to lower the change in repayment rate.
Using the guided interview simplifies the process by using conditional logic. Only questions and screens will be displayed that are based on prior questions the user has answered. Further, as shown in this example, it stops a user if maybe this isn't the right course of action to take. In this example, we see that maybe they need to file an appeal with the Social Security office. And so it would have them do that instead of completing the form online.
Additionally, these digital guided interviews enable the recipients of Social Security benefits to empower their right, or they're empowered to exercise their rights and continue earning the legal benefits that they're otherwise entitled to. After inputting their financial information, the user signs their form directly on the digital guided interview using their mobile device or manually after printing out the completed form.
Finally, as the interview draws to a close, the user will be able to select their closest Social Security office so that they can contact them and submit the changes or forms they need to. Their next step is they're able to easily download the PDF with the completed information that has been drawn from the interview. And they're given a quick set of instructions as to the next steps, filling in their Social Security number, signing, and anything else they might need to do.
After downloading the form, this is what an example of what the final product looks like. Additionally, the users receive a next steps document, which gives them detailed step-by-step instructions on how they can deliver this completed form to their local Social Security office, how they can appeal any potential overpayments, or resources for additional questions and assistance. Now, for the people who utilize, or the people who need these forms, it only works if they're aware that the tool exists. So my ask to all of you in the audience today is to go to courtformsonline.org, find a legal document that you commonly complete with clients or someone in your organization completes with clients, and try using it and tell others in your organization to use it as well. Because for the person who this document assists, it can be a huge change maker in their life, and they will only be aware that it exists if you make them aware of it. Thank you for listening to our presentation. My name is Landon, and this is Tiffany Wiles.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Bergen, and I'm here with Taylor Kosh and Cole Dimitri. And collectively, we have been working to develop online court forms that will benefit local communities with the goal of breaking down barriers to justice. We have, sorry about that. We have done this each in unique ways, working on 3 different projects, but yeah. Sorry about that. I'm a little nervous to be talking. Yeah, we've each done this in different ways, working in part to make forms and filing available 24/7 for any litigant, and by digitizing fee waivers to promote economic accessibility. While we've each worked on the same goal, or towards the same goal of promoting access to justice, we've each done this in our own small ways. Personally, over the last year, I've been working as a clinical fellow with the Lit Clinic. My main position is in the Human Rights and Indigenous Peoples Clinic, while I'm attached to the Lit Clinic, which puts me in a unique role of essentially doing 2 tasks at the same time. First off, my client is the Mashpee tribe, a federally recognized indigenous tribe located primarily on the Cape, with related tribes on Martha's Vineyard and in southeast Massachusetts. The tribe's goals for me for the past year have been to both redraft and rework some of their existing laws to modernize them or bring them, or further allow them to assert their sovereignty, and to implement technological solutions for their tribal court so that they may reach their tribal members and citizens more effectively. Yes, and some of this work, which is very beneficial for the tribe so that they may assert their inherent sovereignty. It bolsters the tribal court. It allows tribal citizens to better participate in the justice system, and allows the court and members to participate in traditional tribal justice systems, such as peacemaking, which is a process in which the 2 parties of a dispute are brought together to discuss the issues between them and hopefully peacefully resolve their differences without having to go to court or to involve judges or lawyers. This work has been very rewarding overall, and it's cool to see such an impact on a local community that I've grown up around my whole life. And while I've been doing this with the Mashpee Wampanoag, Nicole has been working with small claims plaintiffs at the Massachusetts trial court. Do some more work.
Thank you, Michael. Has anyone ever dismissed something important to you as small? It's just a small dent in your car or just a small change to your job offer. In Massachusetts, our court system defines small claims as financial disputes under $7,000, but in reality, these claims aren't all that small to the people who are seeking justice. This is why I embrace the challenge of automating the small claims process, because small claims really do have a big impact on those seeking justice. In bringing small claims online, my goal was to ensure that no matter what the user's circumstances were, they could get their claim to the court. For example, someone who doesn't have a phone number or an email address might worry that those are barriers to filing, that they can't file a small claim. But in the small claims interview, court forms online, we say, no phone number, no email address, no problem. There's a text box where they can propose an alternative way that the court can contact them, such as through a neighbor or a trusted friend. And if they're like me, and they always want to know why a form is asking a certain question, they can always consult our green drop-down templates for more information about any questions that they may have. By holding space for users to explain their circumstances, we respect their reality and build a bridge to the court rather than a barrier. Another way that our interview acknowledges the user's dignity is by asking for their story, their small claim story, and how the court can help them to be made whole again. If the user shares that they're struggling financially, the interview automatically fills out a fee waiver for their court fees along with their claim, because your ability to reclaim what you're owed shouldn't depend on how much you already have. Just by asking if the user needs help paying, small claims interview breaks down a significant barrier to justice for lower income and self-represented litigants in particular. Let's say someone is looking to recover money from their neighbor, but they're concerned that the stress of going to trial might hurt the friendship that they've worked really hard to build. Through our interview, they can learn that mediation is also an option. And then they can choose the path to justice that best fits their needs. In just a few questions, we've built a bridge to legal access. For our courts, filing small claims online means faster case processing, less administrative burden. Instead of sifting through paperwork all day, clerks can instead focus on supporting counsel and maintaining efficient court operations, for example. In essence, my project embodies the idea that getting justice shouldn't depend on your ability to fill out paperwork or hire the best counsel. While my small claims interview helps plaintiffs recover what's already theirs, Taylor's tax lien project addresses the flip side of the same coin, helping defendants protect what they already have. And together with Michael's Mashpee project, our trial court projects ensure that users can start a court case or continue one while still respecting their time, finances, and personhood. I'll hand it off to Taylor.
In conjunction with the Massachusetts Trial Court and Land Court, I used DocAssemble to develop an answer to a tax lien complaint. Essentially, a tax lien complaint is often filed by the city or town where the property is located in response to the homeowner's failure to pay property taxes or failure to pay utility bills on time. To put into perspective how often this is happening in our communities, in the past 5 years, 5 surrounding cities, including Lien and Quincy, made almost $10 million off of tax lien foreclosures and auctions to third-party investors. As I'm sure everyone knows, tax law is complicated. It's hard to read even for lawyers, and unfair to ask normal users, as we've discussed, who may not have the same education level to read them and understand their rights from them. The main goal of the tax lien answer was to simplify all of those statutes and language into one easy to answer question. On the left, you'll see just one of 6 statutes that relates to tax lien foreclosures. This relates to a person's right to reclaim the title of their home, which is the main recourse for a tax lien complaint, and ensures that people are able to pay back their debt over a payment plan and retain the rights to their house. On the right is the question that we came up with for the interview that essentially distills that into 2 responses. And summarizes all 6 of those statutes into one easy to answer question for the user. I worked closely with the Land Court to simplify a lot of this language. We read through the statutes, we parsed out the important parts of that, and then pulled it into the questions to make sure we were still following the law, but writing it in a way that people knew what their rights were. Tax lien foreclosure doesn't have to happen. Courts are very willing to work with the person to make repayment plans and to keep them in their homes. We just have to give them a way to do that. And we have to lower the barrier to them making that first step and answering the complaint so that they are not evicted. Through all 3 of our interviews, we work closely with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe and the Massachusetts Trial Court to lower those barriers to justice that are most common, including plain language and reducing financial burdens to increase access to peaceful dispute resolutions and help people keep their homes and be able to communicate better with their communities. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. So far, we've heard from our colleagues about removing, excuse me, there we go, about removing traditional barriers to justice through the use of design and legal technology. Now we want to share with you how we've approached implementing a brand new law in real time. To ensure that access to justice isn't delayed by confusion or the lack of legal knowledge. On May 5th of this year, the Affordable Homes Act will go into effect, allowing tenants to petition the courts to seal certain eviction records. The eviction sealing guided interview is a real example of law and technology design working hand in hand from day one. As many of you know, an eviction record can have lasting consequences. Even if a tenant wins their case, or if the eviction is dismissed, that record can still show up in background checks, making it very difficult to secure housing, employment, or stability. Housing is foundational. Without it, everything else becomes harder, from maintaining health to holding down a job or caring for a family. The presence of an eviction record often leads to a cycle of instability that disproportionately affects low-income residents and communities of color. And that's really why this project matters. It translates a new legal right, the ability to seal an eviction record, into real, usable access through a free online guided interview. This tool will help people act on their rights without needing legal expertise or representation at a time when legal aid is stretched thin. The guided interview walks users step by step through the process of filing a motion to seal their eviction record. It generates court-ready documents and clear instructions for next steps. Let's take a real-world example. A tenant will call Maria. Maria lived in her apartment for years, always paying rent on time. Her landlord decided to sell the building and began harassing tenants in an attempt to clear them out. Maria stood her ground and eventually found herself served with an eviction notice based on false claims. She went to court and the case was dismissed, but the eviction filing remained on her record. Since then, Maria has been turned away from multiple apartments. Even though she won in court, that record shows up in tenant screening databases. For tenants like Maria, the guided interview is a chance to finally reclaim her future. To seal that record, apply for housing with confidence, and pursue the stability she deserves. It means safer neighborhoods, better schools for her kids, and economic security that was previously out of reach. One eviction record, even a baseless one, can derail someone's life. This interview is about restoring fairness, dignity, and opportunity. However, users like Maria are only one type of user who will benefit from this tool. Legal aid and community organizations work endlessly to bridge the access to justice gap. These organizations are on the front lines of housing justice, but they also face limited staffing and growing need. This new tool will allow them to expand their reach by running workshops and clinics more efficiently, providing these self-help resources for clients at a larger scale. So this technology is not replacing legal aid, but rather amplifying it. It's enabling outreach, education, and empowerment at scale. The courts have worked closely with housing advocates to identify potential friction points in the sealing process. That collaboration has also helped shape this tool's development. The guided interview ensures that forms are filled out accurately, which will reduce court backlogs and potential form rejections, further promoting equal access to justice, especially for those who can't afford a lawyer. When courts and communities collaborate to simplify legal processes, everyone benefits. The system becomes fairer, faster, and more humane. Now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Rami to discuss the results of our work with the trial court this past year.
Thank you, Talene. So as a result of our collaboration with the Massachusetts Trial Court and housing legal aid advocates, we've been able to create an intuitive tool that will allow our users to change their future. There we go. This is our tool is the eviction sealing guided interview. So like a lot of our fellow clinic mates, we've been using DocAssemble to create a guided interview to allow our users to easily seal their evictions records from public record. Whether the eviction was for non-payment or for no fault at all, our interview customizes a guided path that asks the user questions that are specific to their eviction case. So what actually makes our tool so effective in helping tenants? Well, first, it's easy to use. The interview asks simple, plain language questions to gather the necessary information by translating complicated legalese into easy to understand questions. Our users can be certain that they qualify to have their eviction record sealed. Second, it offers guided support. The interview provides helpful notes and definitions throughout so that our users can actually understand the legal requirements and input the correct information with confidence, with no legal background required. Finally, it's quick and it's accessible. Our tool is available 24/7, it's mobile friendly, and it only takes about 10 minutes to complete. Increasing the accessibility and the availability ensures that anyone can fill out their petition from their phone, their tablet, their computer, and they can do so on their own time. By simplifying the process, we're empowering our users to take control of their future and to do it at their convenience. So what is so important about this tool? The impact of this tool goes far beyond simply filling out court forms. It represents the next step in the evolution of legal advocacy. First, it promotes fairness. Many people face long-lasting barriers as a result of their eviction records, and as Tallene mentioned, housing instability feeds a cycle of hardship, including inequitable access to legal aid. This tool helps restore fairness to our justice system by providing the necessary legal resources to those who need them most. Second, it destigmatizes eviction records. Evictions often occur for reasons outside of a tenant's control. By simplifying the process to have these records sealed, we can remove the stigma behind evictions and help individuals and families secure safe housing now and in the future. And finally, it improves our users' economic mobility. Having an eviction record can create barriers to gaining access to jobs and a reliable income. By facilitating the eviction sealing process, those affected by eviction records can have access to better economic opportunities, which benefits not only the tenants themselves, but our communities as a whole. Our eviction sealing guided interview is more than just a tool. It's a critical step toward restoring fairness to our legal system and increasing housing security in Massachusetts. It is a glimpse into the future of legal aid and how, with the help of easy-to-use technology, we can bridge the gap between the justice system and the people that it's meant to serve. Starting in May 2025, tenants, attorneys, and legal aid advocates will have access to our free online tool that walks them step by step through the process of requesting to seal an eviction record. Our goal is to make this process as easy and accessible as possible so that the tenants can have a different ending, the one that they deserve. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let's just one more round of applause for the students. Great work. All right. I have the pleasure now of being able to say it is time for us to eat. Also, we are 100% on time, so great work, everybody, this morning. Please do come up and talk to the students more if you want to learn